In the cool hush of the stone court, King Joseph listened. His throne, carved from black wood and raised above the room, gave him both distance and clarity. Below knelt a man with worn robes and calloused hands. A weaver, one of the thousands that sustained the kingdom's cloth trade. This weaver, Ramu, had come not to beg, but to accuse. He claimed that Haston, a wealthy merchant with ties to the inner court, had stolen his designs, family patterns passed for generations, and profited from them. His voice did not shake with anger, but with despair. Across from him stood the merchant, dressed in embroidered finery, eyes calm. He denied all. He brought witnesses, scrolls, and contracts. His reputation, he said, stood firm. Joseph did not speak for a long while. He studied both men, not with emotion but with calculation. Then he gave his judgment, not in verdict, but in challenge. Each man would weave a single cloth, with his own hands, in full view of the court. There would be no appeals. Truth would be spun, not spoken. Word of the king's test spread across the palace like a draft under a door. Some scoffed, others whispered. But King Joseph remained unmoved. In his mind, no debate could match the testimony of craft. A man may lie through his mouth, but not through his hands. He ordered 2 looms to be set in the marble courtyard, one plain, one gilded. No assistants were allowed, no imported materials. Only what could be spun, dyed, and shaped by the hands of each man. Joseph watched the preparations from his upper window. Haston arrived early, his confidence visible in every motion. He brought fine silks and gold-threaded spindles, tools polished to gleaming perfection. Ramu, meanwhile, brought a small sack of cotton and dyed threads faded with age. His loom creaked as he tested its tension. His hands, though strong, bore the tremor of fatigue. The king made no commentary. His gaze remained neutral, his expression unreadable. But already, he was watching more than cloth. He was reading rhythm, patience, and the language of fingers. By the end of the first day, the contrast between the two was unmistakable. Haston wove with precision, each pass of the shuttle smooth and efficient. His cloth grew quickly, a brilliant lattice of golds and crimsons, symmetrical and gleaming. Courtiers paused to admire it, their eyes drawn to its perfection. Haston welcomed the attention. He answered questions, offered explanations, even smiled at the king's silent observation. His work was a showpiece, and he knew the court favored spectacles. Ramu, in contrast, spoke to no one. His cloth grew slowly, uneven in parts, its colors muted. His hands bled at the edges from friction. But he never stopped. His work took odd turns, spirals, breaks, mirrored segments. It seemed less a pattern and more a map of thought. King Joseph noted the difference not in beauty, but in honesty. One cloth aimed to impress, the other seemed to speak. He saw, already, that the trial was no longer about ownership. It was about understanding which man wove truth, and which merely decoration. On the second day, Haston presented documents to the palace scribes, testaments that claimed authorship of the design, contracts with dates, and a seal that bore resemblance to the royal mark. He offered them without hesitation, urging the scribes to study every line. King Joseph accepted them without ceremony. Alone in his study, he examined the wax. The seal looked right, but there was something wrong with its depth, too shallow, as though cast from a newer mold. The ink smelled fresh. He did not call it a forgery, not yet. Instead, he turned his attention back to the looms. The merchant's cloth was nearly complete, a flawless rectangle of symmetry. Ramu's was slower still, but now carried repeating curves, as if something lived within the pattern. Joseph recalled an old teaching, how certain families used motifs to preserve messages across generations. Patterns that could only be read by trained eyes. He said nothing to his advisors. Instead, he requested the presence of an old scholar. And he waited. That night, King Joseph sat beneath torchlight with the scholar, a frail man who once served as royal cipher keeper. The two bent over Ramu's growing cloth. What at first seemed like decorative flourishes now revealed intent. Twists in the thread-mirrored segments of the kingdom's forgotten cipher, a code once used in wartime, known only to certain royal scribes and artisans long past. It was not random. It was inherited. The weaver's cloth was more than art. It was lineage. It spoke not only of technique, but of memory, proof that the design had not been stolen, but carried. Joseph ordered the scholar to remain silent until the work was finished. Then he returned to court with no expression of what he had seen. The final day would speak louder than anything else. On the third morning, both men completed their work. The court gathered in silence. 2 looms stood, and 2 cloths were raised. Hastings was dazzling. Every line precise. The threads gleamed in the sun. It was the kind of perfection wealth could command. Ramu's cloth, though uneven at first glance, shimmered with complexity. The motifs twisted in nested spirals. To the untrained eye, it seemed almost too strange. But Joseph saw the story within it. The cipher, repeating in layers, like a whisper woven in time. He stood, descending the steps of his throne. The room held its breath. Joseph did not raise his voice. He did not point fingers. He simply held both cloths, one in each hand, and turned to face the court. Joseph laid both cloths across the judgment table. He called no witnesses. He summoned no guards. Instead, he traced his finger across Ramu's weaving, stopping at the repeating sequence. The cipher was undeniable. The code, an ancestral mark of the crown's commissioned artisans, was known to only a few, all bound to secrecy. Yet here it was, woven without flaw, passed through blood, not stolen by trade. Hastings paled but did not speak. His silence condemned him more clearly than any accusation. Joseph turned to the court. In calm voice, he spoke of the true weight of heritage. Of the arrogance of assuming beauty could be bought, and truth buried under gold. His words were few. But no one in the chamber doubted what they meant. The sentence was not death. Joseph believed in longer punishments. He declared that Hastings would live among the weavers he had stolen from, not as a merchant, but as one of them. He would learn the loom by hand, and every cloth he created would be sent not to market, but to charity. He would live humbly, without profit, for the remainder of his life. The court did not cheer. They merely nodded. Even punishment, Joseph believed, should carry quiet dignity. To Ramu, he offered no title, no coin. Only a workshop, land for his family, and the right to weave in peace. The weaver bowed, not in victory, but relief. Weeks passed. The merchant departed in silence. The weaver returned to his village, where a small stone plaque marked the start of his new workshop. The cloth, framed and preserved, remained in the Hall of Threads, where scholars could study its cipher and remember the judgment it brought. King Joseph resumed his rule, but something had shifted. In the quiet of his study, he would sometimes look out at the looms in the lower courtyard, listening to the sound of hands and thread. It reminded him that truth, like cloth, may begin weak, but gain strength in pattern and time.